Well, let's discuss all of that with the Labour MP, John Mann, Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on antisemitism. Mr Mann, thanks very much for being with us. Just that line from Joan Ryan's letter, I cannot remain a member of the Labour Party while this requires me to suggest that I believe Jeremy Corbyn, a man who's presided over the culture of anti-Jewish racism and hatred of Israel, which now afflicts my former party, is fit to be Prime Minister. Does she have a point?
Well, she certainly has a point, because there are more important people than MPs resigning from the Labour Party, young activists resigning, and they're resigning because they think the Labour Party's not prepared to stand up for them, young Jewish people or others who are looking to what's happening to their Jewish friends. And you know, if this kind of thing, the thing that happened to Luciana Berger, if that had happened under Tony Blair would have acted. If that had been, say, Diane Abbott, who'd have been picked on, and someone tried to get rid of her because she was a lefty in the Blair era, Tony Blair would have intervened. Neil Kinnock did intervene. He intervened in Tottenham when there was very controversial deselections going on, and in that case intervened not for someone who was of his political persuasion at all. Blair would have intervened for someone who was adamantly opposed to many of the things that he believed in. Jeremy Corbyn didn't intervene with Luciana Berger. That was a terrible error. Terrible mistake. Well, he should have done, and that would have, with anti-Semitism, have created quite an opportunity to move forward. Now it's running backwards all the time. That's the danger. That's the problem. Well,
it almost seems like you're past the point of no return now. So if you agree with Joan Ryan, will you be following her then?
No, but let's be clear. This new party is a Remain party. It's people who fought on a manifesto that said that we abide by the decision the British people took in the referendum. And this new party will have no credence, no credibility in the Midlands, the North, precisely because of that. That's its fundamental flaw line. That's why, I call it Chucker's group. It's slightly bigger now.
And there may well be others from across the chamber following them later on today.
But some of those Tories, people such as Anna Soubry, Justine Greening, have been in discussions and negotiation with Chucker and his small group for the last year. So this has been pre-planned. They want to scupper the referendum. They're quite open about that. It's not a secret. But that is not the manifesto Labour MPs stood on. What I would do, though, if I was Jeremy Corbyn, and I've advised him of this very recently, is when it comes to the vote on Brexit, I would have a free vote of Labour MPs, because the Labour Party is split on the issue of Brexit, as is the Tory party. That would assist a lot in Labour moving forward.
Indeed, but it strikes me that, you know, the comments that Joan Ryan has made in her letter, the comments you've made about Jeremy Corbyn and the way in which he's dealt with anti-Semitism, you know, people within the Parliamentary Labour Party have been making those, not just for weeks, but months, you know, years now, about the way in which Jeremy Corbyn operates. At least Joan Ryan has done something about it. Working within the PLP, you haven't managed to change anything.
Well, I've been on your programme for the last 16 years. You may not have seen all the clips, though I'm sure actually now you recall them. For the last 16 years, calling out anti-Semitism on the left, on the right, and saying all the way through that one will clean up one's own backyard first, one's own party. I first said that to Sky Television about 15 years ago, and I've consistently said it. So many of us have been challenging anti-Semitism well before Jeremy Corbyn emerged as a national figure, a known figure, well before, and I have no intention of stopping doing so, and neither have I any intention of handing over my party to this group of anti-Semites who've infiltrated in, who haven't been thrown out. I shall continue to campaign and demand, if I'm the last man standing, demanding these anti-Semites are removed from my party.
I understand that, but at what point does it become intolerable? Because it clearly became intolerable for Luciana Berger.
It's intolerable now what's happened to Luciana Berger. The anti-Semitism's intolerable, but some of us are going to stand and fight, and we will fight to the last, and we will not budge from that. And frankly, I don't give a damn what people elsewhere in the Labour Party think about our stance on fighting anti-Semitism. We will not budge, many of us, on that. We will carry on fighting. We will cleanse this party. Whether that can be done quickly, we'll see. Whether we have a cataclysmic election defeat because we're not prepared to act, we will see. But we will do so. And my demands on Jeremy Corbyn remain the same as they were a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, 3 years ago. Sort this problem out.
Why should the constituents of people like Joan Ryan, Luciana Berger and the others, why should they have to wait years to get to vote again on who represents them, given that they stood in 2017 full square behind the manifesto put forward by your party?
Well, if I was to resign and say that I disagreed with the manifesto that I stood on, I'd stand
well, it doesn't
immediately.
Appear to be the case. I mean, Chuck yesterday struggled to find a policy in the 2017 manifesto that he couldn't, that he did disagree with.
Well, I would stand and fight a by-election if it was me. I'd put myself to the people. I'm not resigning, but if I resigned, I'd put myself to the people and I'd put it to the test. And I think that some of them should do that. I think if you're saying that you speak for the people, then put that to the test. But that's decisions that they will make. I suspect they're not going to do that. I suspect there'll be some Tory defections, a small number of Tories, people such as Anna Soubry, Justine Greening, who will leave the Tory party as well. I suspect they won't fight by-elections. But you've got to be bold in politics. I'm not resigning. I know of others who are not resigning who share the same view as me. But those who do, fight a by-election. Let's have some by-elections on it.
I mean, those who are returning to the party at the moment, Derek Hatton, we learned over the past few days, a bit of doubt as to when he actually got back into the party. But
there's a red Tory, Derek Hatton. He supports a 10%. He's like John Redwood. He's like Jacob Rees-Mogg. No inheritance tax, 10% income tax. Wants everyone to be driving around in big cars and pay no taxes. Well, who pays for the National Health Service? You know, these kind of working-class Tories like Derek Hatton, he's no different in his policies.
George Galloway, who's also applying to get back in, I think it would be a bit of a push to describe as a working-class Conservative.
There's a man who did stand as an independent, as a traitor to the Labour Party. Once a traitor, always a traitor. So Galloway should not be allowed back in.
So that kind of language, traitor, cowards, is wrong when it's directed at the
Galloway
seven people
was a
traitor. But it's right when it's directed at George Galloway.
Galloway was a traitor, so as an independent. So it's a bit rum of him to be calling other people traitors now. And Hatton, Hatton was an extremist Marxist militant tendency. You know, brought the Labour Party in Liverpool to its knees, led to the Liberals running Liverpool for a huge period of time, attacked the unions, sent redundancy letters to working class people. I mean, that's got nothing to do with socialism. It's got nothing to do with the Labour Party. That kind of extremism. No surprise that he's a man who supports the economics of John Redwood and Jacob Rees-Mogg of having the lowest possible taxes in the world. He'd be better off joining Donald Trump, to be honest.
You say that they don't represent the party, but you look at the way with which the glee with which these names are being discussed and welcomed back into the fold by people who are members of the party. Is it not possible that you say that this is not the Labour Party? Well, the definition of what the Labour Party actually is right now has changed substantially.
This is a battle for the soul of the Labour Party.
Well, one side is winning at the moment.
Well, there are people refusing to act, there are people failing to act. There's a chronic lack of leadership. And the kind of thing that happened to Luciana Berger, for that to happen in the Labour Party is so abhorrent to everything the Labour Party has ever stood for. And I'm calling, it's about time that the unions stood up and be counted in actually getting this sorted out, because the Labour Party is becoming unelectable. And frankly, Jeremy Corbyn needs to start acting as a leader. He's failed to do so when it came to issues such as Luciana Berger, and a great opportunity, an obvious opportunity to do so. I hope he's going to do so in the near future.
OK, so what can Jeremy Corbyn do? First and foremost, to regain your trust, but to put the party back to where it needs to be, to win an election. And, you know, there are already people talking right now about the prospect of an election in the not-too-distant future. Well,
I'm not sure there will be an election, but the first thing, and not least because the one thing these defections do is it ensures that a no-confidence vote, even with the DUP voting for it, is not going to get through Parliament. People who've just resigned and haven't yet formed a party are not going to be no confidence in a government and force themselves into an election. So actually, one thing this does do, Theresa May's probably quite happy today, it gives Theresa May a lot of comfort in terms of not losing a no-confidence vote in the next 12 months, even if a handful of Tories defect. So there will be no election as a consequence of this, I think. But what Jeremy Corbyn ought to do, in the short term, the immediate term, is hold the Parliamentary Labour Party and the Labour Party in the country together with a free vote on the Brexit vote. There is a huge divide in the country, 52 to 48. There's a huge divide in all the political parties. That would be coherent, it would be good leadership. What he then needs to do is he needs to get on top of this issue of anti-Semitism, and he hasn't done so, and he hasn't bothered speaking. I mean, you know, I'm only one person. Don't need to speak to me. Go speak to other people. He hasn't spoken to me. He hasn't spoken to others about it. Most crucially, he has not been speaking to the Jewish Labour MPs about it, as Luciana Berger so eloquently pointed out. He needs to start acting as a leader in that. And thirdly, he needs to think through, what is the Labour Party about? Because, you know, you've got these extremists trying to now get rid of it, but they've been trying for the last year, trying to get rid of people like me and Graham Stringer, the Brexit supporting Labour MPs, trying to they're failing miserably in it. But the fact that there's people near to Corbyn trying to do it, if the Labour Party is not a broad church, the Labour Party doesn't win power, therefore Corbyn is never Prime Minister. That is a reality.
John Mann, many thanks for being with us.